Hey Wargamers, it's Mike from epicduckstudios, and welcome to the Epic Hobby. This is part 2 of the White Scars Commander painting guide. In this video I'll be focusing on painting the white armor. The armor's already been base coated using an airbrush with just pure white. I'm going to begin adding some shading with Willow game color Khaki. With this armor I'm going for a sort of ceramic look, so I want the shadows to have a little bit of a warm tint to them. The khaki color also helps the armor look a little bit worn and kind of dirty, which really helps sell the appearance of this miniature. Mostly though I'm using it because it's a little bit warmer than just using a gray to shade the white. I've thinned the consistency down a fair bit just using plain tap water, and I'm going to be using several coats of this to make sure that it doesn't build up too quickly in any particular areas, and that the color feathers out nicely. So with this color, I'm mostly focusing on the undersides of surfaces, around things like rivets, and where panels kind of meet, I want to add a little bit of shading as well, just to add some definition between them. I'm also making sure to work a little bit of the color in anywhere two armor plates meet or overlap. You'll notice that I revisit the same areas over and over again with a little bit of a pause between. What I'm doing there is allowing the paint that's already on to dry completely, so I make sure that I don't get any weird pooling effect from the paint. Especially when paint's been thinned with tap water, it can behave a little bit strangely, especially if you revisit it while it's still a little bit wet. So I'm basically just being patient as a precaution. You can see here now that I'm painting entire surfaces with this color. I'm focusing mainly on the ones where natural shadow should fall. You can see with the legs, for example, I really focus on them more towards the foot, but almost the whole surface is painted at this point. You can see now that when viewed from the bottom, the model has a much more distinct tan color than it does when viewed from the top. Now that the shadows are all blocked in with Khaki, I'm going to start adding some depth to them using a Seraphim Sepia wash. The amount of wash I've got loaded on the brush is very sparse, there's barely even a drop there. Because I don't want it to flow off the brush, I want it to stay exactly where I put it. This use of a wash is a little bit different than when you just bulk paint a whole model with it. I'm not trying to get overall shading with it so much as I am trying to get some tinting out of it. So I'm very purposely applying just a little bit of this wash in the deepest shadows of that tan color I recently painted. This is also going to improve the color contrast in areas where the difference between the white and the tan just wasn't pronounced enough, which is mainly around the feet and some of the other sort of tighter detailed areas. At this point you can start to see a lot of color variation building up on the left leg. The color's looking a lot less pure white and has a lot more of a bone or a ceramic tint to it. This next step really has nothing to do with painting the white armor, but all of the metal is currently just plain and bare, and I'm going to apply an Agrax Earthshade wash to all of it just to start bringing the detail out. There's really not a lot of finesse to this step. This is how you normally use a wash if you're painting something to a quick tabletop level. It works very well with bare metals, but I wouldn't want to use this on the other parts of the model this way. I'm taking a little bit of extra care to make sure I don't get this on the white parts of the miniature, but beyond that I'm really just slopping it on as if I was painting the metals to a quick tabletop standard at this point. With the metals washed, I'm going to start applying a little bit of this to the skull and a few of the other extra details as well. Here I'm applying the wash to the copper details on this model's chest just to give them a little more shading as well. I'm also making sure to let the wash kind of spill over the sides of these hoses so that they really stand out from the white armor around them. I'm being careful not to overdo that though because I don't want it to run or pool on any of the white armor. Similar to the method I used with the Seraphim Sepia wash, I'm going to work the Agrax Earthshade into some really deep shadows here. I'm being extra careful and precise because I want the wash to produce very thin, sharp lines. I'm mostly focusing this where plates of armor overlap or where there's a large gap between them, such as the gaps on the back of the legs. You can see that overall there's more and more color variation in the white, and it's all taken on a very ivory kind of tone. The trouble with using washes is that they can leave streaks or pooling marks, so I'm going to start to feather those out using a little bit of Flayed 1 flesh, which is basically equivalent to the halfway point between the white and the khaki on this model. I am thinning it down a fair bit with water because I want to make sure it gives me some nice smooth transitions between the different shades present on the miniature now. I'm basically painting this over entire surfaces, just leaving the deepest shadows present, but because it's so thinned down, the different colors will show through it, and it'll just make a nice smooth transition out to white at the edge. I'm also going to use this Flayed 1 flesh to start adding some detail to the skull and the different bits of parchment on this miniature. There's a few spots on the miniature that could still use a little bit of Leadbelcher, mostly around the skull. It has some metal attachments on it, so I'm going to go ahead and just hit those now before I continue. I'm going to finish up the white armor by starting to add some extreme highlights with pure white. In this case I'm using Vallejo Game Color Dead White, but any pure white paint will work. If you want to go for an absolutely true white, you need to use Titanium White, which is a normal artist acrylic. Titanium White is the truest white that a paint can achieve, and you can even use it to highlight white armor, and it will be noticeably brighter than the other shades of white, such as Games Workshop or Vallejo Whites. With this shade of white, I'm really just focusing on sharp edges and upper facing surfaces. Basically anything that light shining from above will directly hit, or anything that just really needs attention drawn to it, where perhaps two armor plates overlap, or there's a sharp crease that we want to just define a little bit better. And that finishes up the white armor. There's going to be one more video in this series where I focus on the red and black aspects of the armor, some details on his weapon, and other finishing details. Thanks for watching, and as always, do something epic. Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you liked that one, why don't you check out some battle reports right over here, or check out more epic hobby content right over here. If you really like what I'm doing and want to support my creative efforts, I really urge you to become one of my supporters on Patreon. You can find out more about that right here. Thanks for watching.